With Guyana just recording its highest gold production to date, close attention is being paid to the performance of the industry this year, particularly with the significant drop in the price for gold on the international market.
Guyana is making more lands and resources available for mineral production and investments in the natural resources sector. These initiatives are being pursued in keeping with the country's commitment to protect the environment. New litter prevention regulations will come on stream from March 2014. Ensure you play your part by helping to stop the dumping of garbage in canals and on parapets. Stop littering and do the right thing.
This week on the Eldorado Shines, we will take a look at the main governing body responsible for the trade of this precious metal in the country, the Guyana Gold Board. To tell us more about the operations of the agency, here is Anantram Balram.
The Gold Board basically provides a ready market for the small and medium scale miners where they can come and sell out their production. The functions are few, but the gold trade is what we focus on mostly, and in 2013 we continue to do that.
Gold producers in the country are required to adhere to certain guidelines as it relates to the sale of the commodity.
All mined gold, all gold won through activities of mining should be declared and sold to the Gold Board or the licensed dealers. So the metal remains the property of the state until royalty and taxes, royalty mainly, have been paid. So all gold, mined gold, should pass through the Guyana Gold Board. We have initial tests that we use as guidelines. However, there is also lab tests. We extract samples and send to labs locally in Guyana. We use the Guyana Geology and Mines Lab. Overseas, we have the Royal Canadian Mint that do those tests depending on what the miners require. The miners, when they bring the gold to the Gold Board, it's for sale. They buy the gold here to sell it to the Guyana Gold Board. And with the initial test, we'll give them a settlement pending the final settlement on the return of the samples from the lab.
The record high price for gold over the last 2 years saw an increase in the mining activities and resulted in Guyana recording its highest ever gold production. However, the recent decline in the price for the commodity has been a cause for concern.
In 2013, the declaration was 481,103 ounces against 438,063 ounces, I think, in 2012.
The dramatic drop in the price for gold is also seeing some miners facing serious challenges.
The quantities are there, but it's unfortunate that the price did not hold as it did in 2012. So you might have to sell off more quantities to get the desired level you need to be at. Coming out of September 2012, when gold was around $1,800, miners tend to put more energy, more effort financially into the mining activities. However, in 2013, we've had three significant movement downwards in the excess to 20%, and that significantly affected the market. So when you're used to $1,800 and you recognize that you're trading at $1,200, that must cause some financial confusion for the miners, especially the ones that have loans and equipment on high purchase and whatever else.
The Guyana Gold Board will continue to closely monitor the movements in the price for gold in 2014, as trade in the commodity continues in mining districts across the country.
1263, 1264 area. At the Guyana Gold Board, we looked at various analysis charts done, and we think 2014 might average out around 1350 or higher.
While mining operations and other activities in the extractive sector continue to grow, Ghana remains cognizant of the importance of protecting the environment and the many communities that exist in close proximity to mining operations. This has seen a steady push to encourage safer and more environmentally friendly mining practices. One such intervention is the move to reduce and remove the use of mercury in the mining sector.
In 2013, a new international convention to control mercury emissions was opened for signing in Japan in response to the reality that mercury pollution is a global problem that no country can address unilaterally.
Geeta Singh of the Environmental Protection Agency tells us a bit more about that agency's role in this initiative.
So the EPA is involved with assisting the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment as it relates to the Minamata Convention in the forming of teams with GGMC, the Ministry, EPA. Initially, for the Ministry to even get to the point of deciding that they will sign on to this convention, there was a lot of background work which was done, and there was a team set up. I fortunately was on that team. It was actually led by the Minister himself, and we were tasked to get the relevant information as it relates to what this convention is about and what the implications can be for Guyana. So basically, we had several meetings and discussions relating to that, and it seemed fit for the environment and for the country at large that Guyana should take the path of going down the road of signing the convention. So the Minamata Convention was signed in October of last year.
Much research and analysis were conducted by the Ministry of Natural Resources and the Environment to determine the way forward in signing on to the convention.
We were told, okay, this is the convention, go and find your information as to what this convention is about, which are the countries that have already signed on to the convention, and what implications does it have for the country. The difficult questions were, GGMC, is it realistic? In what time frame do you think Guyana can phase out mercury? And we were questioning and toying with 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, and the discussion was back and forth as to what is realistic that we can aim towards. At the end of the day, you're aiming towards an objective for which hopefully we can meet. Obviously, once you have established your time frame that you think is somewhat realistic, you then need to put the necessary actions in place to get there.
So what exactly does Ghana hope to achieve by signing on to the Minamata Convention on Mercury?
This convention basically sees the phasing out of mercury over a period of time, and hence Guyana, being signatory to that convention, would be required to phase out the use of mercury, particularly in the mining sector, because that is the largest area in which mercury is currently used in Guyana.
The negative impact of mercury use on the environment and individuals using this chemical formed the basis for Guyana's decision to phase out its use.
Mercury is one of the common elements in the environment. I must state it is found naturally in the air, soil, and water. It's a naturally occurring element. However, it's used extensively in Guyana and many other countries in the world, especially where in the mining sector. It's one of the elements in the world that has the property of easily forming alloys with other metals, gold, for example. So basically what mercury does is that it forms a metal with gold, and it's then used to extract the gold from the other materials that are there, and then to get the gold you have to actually release the mercury, and it's normally done by burning. Mercury, it bioaccumulates and it biomagnifies. So basically, if mercury is consumed by a fish and other fishes eat that fish and humans eat that fish, you find that it keeps accumulating. So the highest predator that would be utilizing material that has been contaminated with mercury, you would find that they have the higher mercury concentration. What does it mean, and what should we be aware of? Mercury in its more volatile state and that is easily absorbed is methyl mercury, and basically the major health concern that this causes is nervous disorder. It actually affects the brain and the nervous system. You can find symptoms such as nausea, headaches, insomnia, vomiting, diarrhea, simple things that you may not consider related to mercury. Those are some of the symptoms that it shows.
In addition to miners, other individuals who come in contact with mercury are also at risk when using this chemical.
The goldsmiths and those who operate with gold smelting needs to be aware of the risk associated with exposure to mercury, because just by the smelting process they're probably only thinking of, let's get the gold out of here. Mercury vapors are given off during that process. They're inhaling that mercury, and they're therefore exposed. Sometimes they do not relate their headaches, their insomnia, their dizziness with the work that they do. But the thing is, it can affect them. They need to use protective gear. They should be using proper gloves, facial masks, proper gear, and not only that, it's important that the area in which they operate is properly designed. It should be properly designed, and there should be extractor systems in place and filtration systems, say activated charcoal systems and filters that actually traps this mercury that is being released into the environment. Because even though it may not directly affect the goldsmith and the worker at that point in time, it can affect the surrounding neighbors, or it is released in the air and hence can affect the earth.
In addition to its role in Guyana's push to remove the use of mercury, the Environmental Protection Agency is also involved in several other initiatives that aim to ensure mining is conducted in a safe and environmentally friendly manner.
All large-scale mining operations are authorized by the agency, and in the process of authorizing that, environmental impact assessment is required for large-scale gold mining automatically. It's part of our legislation, and it will be required. And in the process of conducting that environmental impact assessment, which is done independent of the agency, but the agency approves the process, approves the document, a full assessment of the implications of that project on the environment is assessed. All aspects of the process and operation, all aspects. And it is required in the environmental impact assessment as well that an environmental management plan be prepared. So basically all the aspects of the operation which they have identified can create some significant or any environmental impact. The document is required to address what measures can be put in place to reduce those impacts.
It is also important to note that efforts are routinely made to have the public and other stakeholders involved in the process that leads to crafting new policy and regulations.
The public is involved in the EIA process at all stages. The public is involved in setting the terms of reference for the study that needs to be done. So they mold what the document should contain. And those comments are normally done at public meetings that are advertised and the public is invited to. And like I said, that frames the document that is done. In addition, once the document is prepared, they're also invited again to review the document to ensure that their concerns are addressed.
The Environmental Protection Agency will continue to work closely with all stakeholders to ensure that Guyana's human resources as well as the environment remains protected.
New litter prevention regulations will come on stream from March 2014. Ensure you play your part by helping to stop the dumping of garbage in canals and on parapets. Stop littering and do the right thing. Polluting waterways and vegetation through mining activities is an offense. Be responsible. Protect the environment.
The Ministry of Natural Resources and the Environment welcomes a Partnership for National Unity's realization that due process was followed and no major violations were committed by the Minister of Natural Resources and the Environment to grant permission for a geological and geographical survey in the New River Triangle area. APNU has also accepted that the Minister was accurate in his response to the Selectorial Committee on Natural Resources. These most recent revelations have since vindicated the Minister and the government's position on mining activities south of Guyana.
why is it are we meeting here on the last day of January? And it is, from my perspective, and I want this to be collective, it's not necessarily what the minister, the government wants, but what all of us in this room want. And that is for us to understand from each other the day-to-day issues that we face, for us to have a firmer appreciation of the challenges as well as the issues and the opportunities that we encounter in our respective area, be it in the natural resource side or on the environmental management side. And looking at how it is one, having, at the end of the day, we hope a better appreciation, how it is that we can work together, supporting each other, looking at recommendations, one of the recommendations by Major General in terms of looking at synergies and support and better collaboration, how it is together we can have those matters addressed. Historically, and I've always rejected this notion that there cannot be any, as it were, any symbiotic, any close collaboration, close interplay between natural resources development and environmental management. And the traditional view for many years is always seen as two competing interests. And perhaps in some jurisdiction and the old thinking and teaching in this regard might have in some way justified that thinking. But in Guyana's setting and in our own unique arrangements that we have, we cannot afford to have, as it were, this perpetual conflict, but rather how it is that at the end of the day we can bring about closer synergies, and where one perhaps complements the other, and rather than we see them as opposing sides, standoff, and natural resources versus environmental management cannot be, and we cannot afford to do that if we're going to talk about our country's development and we talk about prosperity. And then that brings me back to what is our country's developmental strategy, developmental outlook. And the relevant documents that have spoken to our outlook in terms of strategic development nationally have been the National Development Strategy, talking about the revised version, and more recently, the Low Carbon Development Strategy. And those speak directly to issues that concerns the issues that relate to natural resources and environmental management. But then there are also some associated national strategic documents which directly and some indirectly speak to the outlook of the sector. We can talk about the National Competitiveness Strategy, because that looks at the business aspect, and a lot of those cover activities that relate to the natural resources sector. Or we can also talk about our poverty reduction strategy, which in fact looked at ways in which we can bring down the rate of poverty, bring about or accelerate social and economic development. Again, those really, if we go back to those fundamental documents, and I encourage all of us to do that from time to time, it will allow us to appreciate better the strategic focus on where we're going and where we ought to go. Because these documents too did not fall out of thin air. They came about from extensive national consultations. Extensive, covering perhaps nearly every community in our country, and covering all stakeholders. And then they were also benefited from references, be it international, from expert groups, NGOs, and married entities in and out of our country. And so they represent a body of work, but also, more importantly, the collective will of our people where we want to go. Because no strategy or no outlook will make sense or will be able to implement if these do not gel, if these do not respond to the aspirations of our people. And so, as not only as decision makers, but as managers and technical officers, it is important that we, from time to time, reference and look at these documents. And I'm happy to say that in a major way, the work that we have been doing in the natural resources and in the environment sector have been consistent with the approaches that have been promulgated. Some may talk about targets, some may say about the outlines of these documents. We've been able to be consistent in our implementation. And we have not found so far any substantial deviation from the earlier documentation as well, or the earlier strategy document, as well as the most latest in this regard. And that is very important. And it is comforting so that we all recognize that we are, as it were, staying the course in terms of the development of our country based on the aspirations of our leaders, be it political leaders, social leaders, economic leaders, but also of our people, which is much more important in terms of where do we take instruction and guidance from. So that is the first point I wanted, well, the second point I wanted to make. The first being that we need to constantly and consistently reference and to see where we are in relation to these documents. And even if things have moved on, take for instance the National Development Strategy spoke up to 2010, and some of the targets that we had, whether it's on the forestry side, the mining side, the environmental management aspects, or even new areas of the economy, using the environment as the base. And if you looked at, one may say that perhaps the document itself needs to be updated, but I make the point that the low carbon development strategy, in a way, takes the baton from 2010 and is moving forward in this regard in terms of our outlook. So it is not that we are lacking a development framework. It's not that there's a hiatus and there's a gap in terms of our strategic outlook. And with the other document, which take for instance the National Competitiveness Strategy, where it is co-managed and it is co-led and co-implemented by the private sector. That's an arrangement where a model that has come about where, as it were, 50-50 ownership. And 50-50 ownership not only in terms of the ideas contained therein, but also 50-50 ownership in terms of rolling it out. So those documents, even if the time frame set, we must constantly look in terms of ensuring that we're consistent, and we have been. Secondly, in terms of our targets, and continuing to apply, where relevant, where necessary, the instruments and the ideas and the outlook contained in those documents.
Did you know that an environmental impact assessment is a study best carried out at the planning stage of a project to identify and assess the effects the project may have on our environment and well-being? Did you know that noise pollution affects both health and behavior? Noise pollution can cause annoyance and aggression, hypertension, high stress levels, among other ailments.
Welcome to Guyana, the gateway to South America. A pristine haven of abundant natural resources. We are a nation born in sacrifice and enriched by our togetherness. When we play, we celebrate every effort. When we celebrate, we salute more than success. We exude our right to move forward.
new litter prevention regulations will come on stream from March 2014. Ensure you play your part by helping to stop the dumping of garbage in canals and on parapets. Stop littering and do the right thing. Guyana is making more lands and resources available for mineral production and investments in the natural resources sector. These initiatives are being pursued in keeping with the country's commitment to protect the environment.
You have been watching El Dorado Shines. Do join us again next week for another program. Until then, do remember that we all have a role to play in protecting the environment.